So welcome everybody. Come on in. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and we'll get started in just 1 minute. So welcome everyone. Marianne, can you put it back to the first slide?
That is the first one.
From what I said this morning?
This is from last week. I'm sorry, let me just stop my sharing.
Oh, it's okay. I'll just use that one. Yeah, I sent one either last night or this morning. I sent it this morning before I left, but that's okay. We'll use this one.
Sorry, I missed that one.
No worries.
Okay.
Welcome everybody. Come on in. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. I have 11:31, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome. Today's webinar is focusing on how to present and give an excellent oral presentation. My name is Dr. Iris Wagstaff. I am a STEM program director at the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, who puts on the ERN Conference. So I just want to welcome you today. We have a great presenter. She's been with us for a number of years, so we will go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me okay and see me okay? Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and get started. So again, the AAAS hosts the ERN Conference. It's funded by a National Science Foundation grant. And the mission of the AAAS is simple, but it's huge, and that is to advance science, engineering, and innovation throughout the world for the benefit of all people. I will get to some housekeeping right after this slide. So again, the mission of AAAS is huge, but it's small. We accomplish this mission through a variety of programs and initiatives. The overwhelming majority of them have a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, such as our Entry Point program, which supports students in STEM with disabilities, our L'Oreal USA Fellowships for Women in Science, as well as our new initiative, a STEM Opportunity Alliance, which is really meant to span the whole spectrum from K-12 to careers, with a focus on diversity and equity, inclusion, and STEM. So for more information about the AAAS, as well as science, careers, opportunities, employment, visit the website links posted above. Next slide, please. So before I get into, let me actually go over the housekeeping now. As always, we are recording, so we will send the recording and these slides to all of you registered. So you will receive that by the end of this week, as we do with all webinars. So you will receive the slides and the recording if you registered and if you are here today. So just a little bit about the ERN Conference. I mentioned that it is funded by a National Science Foundation grant from the HBCU Universities program. So we are thankful for our partnership with the NSF to put this conference on. We've been doing this conference since 2011. So we are excited to host you all, those of you who are attending on this webinar. Maybe you're just, interested in how you can, give the best oral presentation possible, but the ERN Conference will be from March 14th to the 16th. And just some high-level goals and objectives are to prepare a diverse group of students for global careers in STEM, to really give students, undergraduate and graduate STEM researchers, an opportunity to hone their science communication skills and really build community and a sense of belonging in STEM. Next slide, please. So I really like to acknowledge my team. So in addition to myself, we have Neela White, Allison Gonzalez, Clara Malloy, Janice Lim, and Gabby Haynes, who all helped a very small team to put on this very large meeting for about 1,500 students, faculty, in NSF PI. So I always like to acknowledge my team. We work extremely hard and we are extremely busy right now. I'm dealing with a lot of final plans and logistics. So just want to send a huge shout out to my team. Next slide, please. And now I will hand it off to our amazing presenter for today, Dr. Marianne Leung. She's been with us for years. She is the president and founder of Sustainable Horizons Institute. Before she gets started, I just want to know, so this is a webinar, so you can post questions throughout the presentation in the chat and the Q&A box section, and I will try to answer those as we go, but we will allow for questions at the end. So, you can simply just come off mute and ask your questions, or you can post it at the end, but we will allow time for questions at the end. But if I'm able to answer your questions while the presenter is presenting, then I will answer those questions in the chat or the Q&A box. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Iris. And hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here to talk with you guys about how to create, deliver an excellent oral presentation for the ERN conference. Of course, as I think Iris mentioned, this is open to anyone. So even if you're not planning on going to the ERN conference, hopefully you'll be able to learn some good tips. Just to go over a few, Iris kind of covered the administrative details already about asking questions. Feel free to ask throughout the webinar, and we will try to reserve some time at the end as well. This is planned for a total of 60 minutes. So I actually want to start out by asking you some questions. So I'm going to open up a poll, which you can access through the website shown there, as well as here you can scan this QR code. And so I just want to learn a little bit about you guys. So you can text by using the instructions on the screen. You can join by sending this text of Marianne Leung 407 to 22333, or you can go on to a website, or you can scan the QR code. But we're going to start out by just kind of getting a little feeling for how you guys are feeling today. All right, great. We're getting some responses already. I like that, feeling great. It's a nice big happy face. So this is just a nice fun way for us to interact with each other. So the polls are not, not going to, keep the information, and it's all going to remain confidential, and we're not going to try to make any scientific, inferences on the data. It's just a fun way to interact. So please go ahead and log into the poll. I see that we've got more people answering. I'm glad to see you're getting access. So as you can see, this is a word cloud. And so we've got a lot of people feeling great. So I'm so happy to hear that. And as well as fantastic, blessed, excited, nervous. Okay, nervousness is natural, and sometimes it gives you really great energy. So wonderful. And I see lots of some happy faces as well. So very happy to hear from you guys, and it looks like everyone's doing really good. So, okay, thank you for answering that. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next question. And that is, who is your favorite scientist, engineer, mathematician, tech geek, or anybody in this world of STEM? So, of course, the ERN conference is all about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So this could be your professor, it could be your friend, it could be someone famous who discovered something or developed an equation, whoever you like. Okay, so we're getting some answers coming in. We've got Newton, who of course was one of the seminal scientists from many years ago. Katherine Johnson, and I see someone has figured out that if you put a dash between two words, it'll keep them together, because this is a word cloud, and if you just do individual words, it's going to take the words on their own. So great. We got McClintock, Mensa, Emmy Noether, Farid, very good. Okay. Newton is growing in size, so that's more and more people that have interest there. All right, very good. Brian Warren, Jeff Benison, Patrick, somebody. Great. Okay. Oh, look, now Catherine has grown in size, so more and more people are liking Katherine Johnson. Very good. All right. Okay, that's wonderful. Thanks again for participating in that one. I'm going to bring up another poll question. And this is to start learning a little bit about you who are participating in this webinar. Please just let me know what your academic status is. So, okay, good. We have quite a few doctoral students, some undergraduate and masters as well. So just no wrong answer here, of course. And of course, not everyone is necessarily students. So that you might fall into the other category, but yeah, just kind of curious where we are here. Okay, now as more people are responding, we're getting a little, it's fun to watch the numbers bounce around, or the percentages, of course, go around. So far, we have right now more master students, but just almost just a little bit less undergraduates and some doctorals as well as other. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. It's helpful for me to know kind of where you are in your academic career. Now, here's one. What do you plan to do after you graduate? So are you thinking you're going to continue your education? Like if you're a master's or undergrad, maybe go on to a master's or PhD, get a postdoc, go into academia, get a job in industry, get a job in government. There's lots of different things you can do with a STEM degree. Myself, I work at a nonprofit, which I absolutely love. And I didn't discover until much later in life, but I'm glad I found it. There's all kinds of different things, all kinds of different opportunities and things that you'll be able to learn about if you go to the ERN conference. Okay, so it looks like so far, most of you are planning on getting a job in industry. Some are going to continue school or go on to postdoc, and yeah, even some people considering government, nonprofit, or something else. So these are all great topics I'd love to talk about, but unfortunately today we won't have time for that. Okay, I'm going to go on to my next question, which is, have you ever given an oral presentation at any kind of conference at all? Again, no wrong answers, just give me an idea of your experience level out there. I believe if you have given an oral, you will still learn hopefully quite a bit from this webinar. So it doesn't matter, no wrong answer, just give me an idea of how many of you have already given any kind of oral presentation at a conference. So looks like we're almost evenly split there. Okay, great. And one more question. How are you planning on giving an oral at ERN? So this is open to people going to ERN or not, and just curious how many of you will be at ERN. I think there's information in the webinar for you either way, but just trying to get an idea of the audience here. Okay, so looks like most people are planning on going to ERN. Perfect. Okay, so that is going to be our questions for now. I'm going to go back to my slides and let's see, here we go. Bring these back up again. Okay, great. So hopefully you can see my slides now. We're ready to kind of get into the meat of the presentation today. And so just to give you an overview of how this webinar is going to be structured, believe it or not, I'm going to start by talking about why you should even consider giving an oral. So many of you have already given one, but maybe you haven't really considered why. What are the reasons that are really important for you to do oral presentations? Then after that, we're going to start talking about judging criteria. I will go over the very specific criteria for ERN, but also talk about general criteria for conferences as well. I have served as a judge at a lot of different conferences over the years, and so I kind of have a good sense of what happens at a lot of different conferences. So then after that, we're going to start talking about how to actually prepare your presentation. And then we'll talk about how to prepare yourself, as well as how to present and how to manage a discussion as well. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with some just housekeeping and summary type things. So this is the overview, and we're going to start with why to give an oral, which you see is highlighted in pink here. So why should you even consider giving an oral presentation of your research? For some people, it's kind of a scary thing if you're not super extroverted, or maybe even if you're extroverted, but you just don't have experience with public speaking. So there are lots of motivations. Sometimes, your advisor just tells you you need to do this. But really, it's great to understand why it's important. Hopefully, you're excited about sharing the results of your research. That would be a simple, easy reason why. And then maybe you want to, when you go and do an oral, you have opportunity to be in front of people, meet new people. You can share and communicate your excitement for your research, and which could certainly lead to other opportunities, whether those be other programs you're interested in, academic programs or postdocs or jobs. You would, of course, want to demonstrate your skills and abilities. You know what? A lot of people don't realize this, but by giving an oral presentation, you can learn from other people. And last, but of course not least, there's very often prizes. Oftentimes it's recognition that you can add to your CV or resume, which will give a big boost and help raise your resume to the top of the pile. Also, very often there's other prizes, whether it's cash or merchandise. So moving on now to the judging criteria, which you can see is highlighted down below in the chevrons. So for the ERN, your orals are going to be judged on the following aspects. So first of all, the quality and relevance of your abstract. At this point, you've already submitted it. So there's not much you can do, but good to know in the future when you write your abstract, you want to be very careful about how you write it and use some of the tips that I'm going to talk about in this session. Beyond that, the content that you actually deliver in your oral presentation will be judged. How clear you state your objectives and why the research is important. You want to also state your hypothesis or the problem, what you're trying to figure out with your research. You go over your methods, your results, your conclusions, and talk about your future research. You always want to, of course, include references, acknowledgements of your funders as well as your collaborators. It's really good to make sure that you use graphics or some kind of illustrations or photos to help, tell your story. And then the presentation itself, you want to demonstrate your understanding of the material, as well as be able to respond effectively to any questions that might come up. You do also want to make sure that you adhere to the time limits, because at conferences, there are lots of presentations. And in order to get through everyone and equitably share the time, you want to be able to make sure that you stay on schedule. So very, very much advise that you practice so you know that you can deliver your presentation on time. Okay, so next we're going to move on to talking about preparing your slides. And before that, I just want to make a comment regarding the judging criteria. And I would say the criteria that I described on the previous slide, which was specific to ERN, is also very general to conferences at large. So almost all the conferences are going to use the same general kind of criteria for an oral presentation. So now we talk about actually preparing your slides and your presentation. But before you actually sit down and start creating any slides, I suggest that you take a minute to think a little bit about who your audience is and what do they know and what do they not know. Probably more importantly, what they do not know. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. You want to make sure that you organize your presentation in a way that will make it easy for people to follow and to pay attention to you. I suggest you start out with an overview or some kind of motivation. So you grab people's attention right in the beginning and tell them why they should care and pay attention to your presentation. You want to give some background about the problem that you're trying to solve, so put it in the context. And then you want to describe your methods or what you actually did, the results that you found, a discussion, which again, I'll talk in more detail about all these things. You always want to cover your future work and make acknowledgements. So in terms of your starting out and thinking about your presentation and who your audience is, I want you to think about a story. So it's when I first kind of got this advice, I thought, well, this is kind of weird. This is science. We're not humanities. We're not telling stories. But anytime you want to communicate, it's really important to use effective communication tools. And telling a story is a great way to do that. What is a story? Well, there's always a beginning and an end. There's some actors, people who do things. There's maybe a middle with some twists and turns. And there's probably some questions. And in the case of telling a science story, there's always what you discovered. And you want to make sure you share that. And that can be kind of like your crescendo, your really exciting part of your story. So you want to build up to that. So when you tell a scientific story, so kind of on the last slide, I was talking about kind of storytelling in general, but when you tell a scientific story, there's a few things to keep in mind. So when you go in science, there's an old adage that we talk about, and that is when you go further and further in science, you learn more and more about less and less. What does that mean? You get very focused in on a specific area, sub-area, and particular problem within science. And so you know a lot about one specific thing, but you're not necessarily learning a lot of breadth. So when you want to tell a story, what you need to keep in mind is that what you know, all that information you know, which, believe it or not, you know more than probably almost anyone about your particular problem, that you have to balance all that knowledge you have in that technical detail with reaching your audience in a way that they can understand. So even when you're talking with people in your field and in your subdiscipline, you have to keep in mind all of those details that you know that they don't know. And if you're able to balance this, and really it's quite an art of being able to balance, you know, all of the technical detail which maybe is required to fully understand the implications of your work, with telling it in a way that, and in terms that everyone can understand, that's a real art. And if you're able to master that art, it will take you a long ways, because you're always going to be trying to tell people about your work, whether it's to get grant proposals or to get jobs or to get positions or what. You're always going to be selling your work and you're going to need to be able to communicate that to other people. So this is a really, really important skill that I strongly encourage you to think about and try to get good at. So when you're trying to tell your story, you want to make sure you tell it in the right context. You want to know your audience. You want to make sure you tell it in a very well organized way so that people can easily follow you. Because remember, that's the first time they're seeing and hearing about this. And then you want to balance out all of the great scientific or technical detail that you have in your head that you know about, with telling it in an understandable way that people without that great detailed knowledge can understand. Okay, so now we're going to go to a poll question. I'm going to go back to my poll, which is over here. And let me ask you, what is your discipline? And these options are all ones that are covered at the ERN conference. So of course, I generalized and grouped things all a lot together. So all of the biology, ecology, and environmental sciences, and then there's kind of what we call the physical sciences with chemistry, chemical science, physics. There's mathematics and science education. There's social, behavioral, and economic sciences. So which area is your particular area? And as a reminder, these areas are all covered by the ERN conference. Okay, all right, good. Thank you for responding. So you can see we have quite a split mostly between the biological and the physical sciences, but we also have some science and education and math education people. Very good. Okay, with that in mind, I have one more question, and that is, do you think that ERN is a technical conference that's focused on a specific subdiscipline, or is it kind of more general? So is it focused on a specific subdiscipline, yes or no? So far we have all no's. So I guess, okay, there we go. We have a yes. And so mostly no. So I'll give you a minute to think about this. So is it a conference focused on a specific subdiscipline? Okay, so predominantly people are thinking it is no. We've got a few people, yes. So if it was a specific subdiscipline, in my case, my background is chemistry. So that's kind of a broad area. That's already one of the many things that were on the previous question. And then within chemistry, I'm in physical chemistry. And then within physical chemistry, I'm in computational physical chemistry. And what I specifically do is computational quantum mechanics. So that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about a specific subdiscipline. And ERN actually covers not only that, but biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, lots of other areas. So the correct answer here in this case, and I realize not all of you are necessarily familiar with ERN, but it is actually that it is not. So, and why is that important? Does anyone have a guess as to why that would be important in terms of preparing your presentation? So why it's important is because when you go to ERN or any conference like it, since let's say, for instance, me, I'm a computational quantum mechanic, there might be a biologist who comes by to talk to me about my poster. Granted, maybe there could be an engineer, or maybe there could be a computer scientist. So there could be people from a lot of different fields, and certainly probably not my specific subdiscipline. So that means that I need to be prepared to explain myself in a way that someone that's maybe not in my subdiscipline, or maybe even in a different field, might be able to understand. So that's really important for how you kind of tell your story and how you craft your story and what kind of detail you can go into. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about professional presentation and software templates. So now we're moving into how to prepare your presentation, actually kind of getting more into the mechanics. So of course, you probably all already have lots of experience with different tools. We certainly recommend that you use some of the professional software that's available, hopefully through your school or otherwise. There's also lots of templates that are available that you could use. We encourage you to be creative, but keep it professional. And there are lots of techniques to make things stand out. You want to just be careful that you don't use them to excess, and don't use too many flashy type things. You can use color and visual clues to highlight things, but use it sparingly so it doesn't become too chaotic looking or distracting. I also recommend you always have a title for every slide, and you want to use equations and graphics and charts and images so that you can appeal to a lot of different learning styles, because of course there's research showing that different people learn in different ways, some people more visual or auditory. So if you use a lot of variety of techniques, that way you're more likely to be able to reach a broader audience. And of course, you always want to run a spell checker to make sure you don't have any typographical errors. So the next concept I'm going to talk about is called chunking, and it's a way to help you kind of organize your thoughts. So you can see on this slide, the picture is like very unorganized, dust with stuff all over the place. I recently read some research about that just being in a disorganized space, causes stress for people. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that there's not too much clutter or whatnot. Now, there is something I want to share with you that's called the 5 to 7 rule, and that is based on cognitive research, and it basically tells us that humans don't have very good memories. So, and we can only remember about 5 to 7 things, and there's some research that shows kind of it typically is either the first thing or the last things that we've heard, the middle kind of gets a little mucky. So there's lots of techniques that I'm going to share with you today to help with people who have bad memories. And the first one I'm talking about now is this idea of chunking. So probably you're going to want to tell people more than 5 to 7 things, but the technique is that you tell them only 5 to 7 things at a time, and then you create a logical flow from one group of topics to a next, so that they can follow it and make sense of the entire bit, and they'll be able to understand more things. So you create, you talk about 5 to 7 things at a time, you create a flow between them by using transitions, and you also use things that I call signposts, which are ways to help people kind of find their way when you're on the journey, like so you don't forget, get lost in the trees when you're in the forest. The signposts help you kind of remind yourself of where you are in the story. So here's a few examples of some signposts. And there are just visual ways to give people an idea of where they are. And you might recognize that I've already kind of used some of these techniques. So the first one here is what is called the chevrons. And you notice that if there's topic 1, 2, 3, and then highlighted in pink is topic 1. And that says, these are the 3 topics we're going to talk about. And right now we're talking about topic 1. So each on the slide, there's different ways to visually do that. You can probably come up with your own. These are ones that are easily available through some, commercial software. But I do recommend this because it helps people kind of understand, and keep the big picture as well as the details in mind. Remember, some people are going to want that are more big picture oriented and some people more detail oriented. So providing these visual clues to the connection between the two is going to help everyone understand you as you go through your presentation. So in terms of what actually to include on your slides, I always recommend that you make sure that you use large letters, nothing smaller than 16 points. And I usually, honestly, I try to stay at 24 above, because remember, there's always going to be someone in the back of the room who's going to have trouble seeing what's on your slides. You can use different font styles if you like. I recommend only 1 or 2 because, again, it gets a little busy and hard for people to understand and interpret that, and it's going to look more less organized and less simple for people and whatnot. But we do strongly encourage you to use graphics. If you're not an artist and you can't create them, try Googling. You can find things. If you Google them, make sure you use proper credits and you don't violate any copyright laws. You can also use what we call cartoons or illustrations to get across a certain idea. If you want to use analogies, those are great ways for people to kind of make a connection with what you're trying to explain. And again, use different kinds of objects, whether they're graphics or equations or whatnot, as well as text, so that you can appeal to a lot of different learning styles. All right, so next I'm going to talk a little bit of what I call the anatomy of a good talk. So the different components and why they're important. So first of all, as I mentioned previously, you want to start out with an overview, which should also provide motivation as to why someone should pay attention to you for your talk. So the overview, getting back to the cognitive research, you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them. So again, to help people remember, you can say, I'm going to tell you these things. This is the overview of what we're going to cover. Your motivation is typically something in the real world. So in science, depending on which area you're working in, sometimes the work can be very abstract. Myself, I work with a lot of mathematical equations, which is quite abstract. So whenever I talk about my research, I want to talk about it on the real world problems and why that's important to every person every day. So that is one good way to tell people why they should care. Maybe you're doing research that has applications in medicine that will cure disease. So that's going to be another thing. Or you're going to help with climate change or whatnot. So you want to start out by helping people understand why they should care and what is important about your work. And then you want to give a little background about the work, the field and your work. So we're starting at more general and we're getting more and more specific into your particular problem. The background is usually completed through your literature search. So that is what other people are doing in the field. Again, it's like why it's more additional motivation as to why the work is important, but we're getting more and more detailed and closer to your specific project. Then you want to go over your methods or your methodologies, which is basically the procedures, what you actually did. So if you're working in the lab, I mix these solution with this and, tried to create a chemical reaction. And then I, monitored it with these tools. So those are the methods and the procedures of what you actually did. You want to always share your results. So surprisingly, with many of the presentations that I have judged over the years or posters that I've been to, I've seen people kind of forget to tell their results. Like you have to say, this is what we found. So this is the definitive, data or evidence that you found based on your procedures and your methods. So this is what you found. And then the discussion part is, what does this mean? So it's in your interpretation of what was found. So the procedures is actually just exactly what you did. The results is, what did you find? So what are the findings? And that is, and maybe that's, by looking at something. If you're a field biologist, you observed something, or you're running an experiment, you ran it through a mass spec and you got some results. Those are the results. The discussion is, well, what does this mean? How do you interpret these results? That's kind of where it's really very interesting for you to try to figure out what really happened. What does it mean? And then you, of course, want to summarize and tell people what you told them. Again, the old adage is, in the beginning, you tell them what you're going to tell them. You tell them, that's the middle part, and then at the end you summarize by telling them what you told them in a summary fashion, again using these 5 to 7 rules, so the main points that are the take-homes. You always want to make sure that you talk about future work. Again, this is an area that is commonly forgotten about. I see people not cover this. It is part of the judging criteria. And why do you want to care about this? Because the kind of the good and the bad thing about science is that we're always, there's always more to learn. So that's the exciting part. So you want to be thoughtful and think about, well, what we found, what you did in your research, it illuminated something, but it probably also opened up new questions. And what are those questions, and how would you go about answering them? That's the kind of thing you want to cover when you talk about your future work. And then again, of course, you want to acknowledge the funders as well as your collaborators and anyone who helped you complete the work. So for those of you who are attending the ERN conference, there are guidelines which are available online at this URL. So I encourage you to go to that place and read in detail what all the presentation guidelines will be. Okay, so now we're going to move on to preparing yourself. So that's the next section in our in the presentation. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is practice, practice, practice. So, it's always really great to have some time to practice. I know that for myself, when I first started giving scientific presentations, I had had a career before and I'd give lots of presentations. And I thought, well, my advisors are making me practice 3 or 4 times before my actual thing. And I thought it was kind of crazy, but I realized it really is important, especially because we're going to be timed. And it helps just for you to formulate and practice getting the words out of your head and through your mouth out to your audience. So when you practice, I suggest that you Get some people that will sit and listen to you so you can practice in front of them. Of course, you can also practice on your own, but it's really helpful to have some of your peers come in and practice. It's very important, if you can, to try to simulate the audience that you expect to have at the conference, whatever conference you're going to. So if it's you're going to a conference where it's going to be all people in your subdiscipline, then get people like that. And then I encourage you to also get a few people who maybe don't know something about your research. In the case of ERN, certainly get people from different fields and encourage them to ask real questions so that you can prepare yourself for answering questions that you might not have thought of. And then last but not least, I also encourage you to do what I call is prepare to dance on your feet. And that is just be prepared for something to come up that is going to be, you're not expecting, just totally not expecting. I remember in my dissertation, well, in my general examination for my doctorate, someone in chemistry, but from a very different, from inorganic chemistry, and I was in computational physical chemistry, asked this question of me. And it was like from an inorganic chemist perspective, which I am not. And so I was kind of initially thrown off by it, but it was like a good way for me to remember, to learn, to be prepared for questions that you're not expecting. And that's okay. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. So when you come to the actual presentation, there's a few little tips that I want to share with you. The first one is to what I do is called look the part. And of course, that is to wear professional attire. There's a list on the slides of things not to wear, like sandals or halter tops or t-shirts or, revealing clothing. Of course, this is all dependent on the particular culture of the conference you're going to, which is related to the field that you're in. Now, I would say that in STEM, the attire is usually a little more casual than in industry. Like when I used to work in the software industry, a lot of people would come all fancy dressed up with suits and ties, and you see that too often in STEM. So you want to certainly talk to other people if you've never been to the conference before or a conference, so you can get a sense of what the culture is like. But you want to look professional looking within there, and typically in my opinion at most STEM conferences, it's kind of what I would call kind of business casual. So not suits, but also not super casual, like go to the beach kind of clothing. You want to, of course, pay attention to your posture when you're giving a presentation. This actually also helps you to enunciate more clearly if you stand up straight. You don't want to fidget or kind of avoid kind of some of the habits that we do when we're nervous. So you look the part. You also want to speak the part. And that is, you want to be able to make sure that you speak loudly and clearly and confidently. So you can speak confidently, believe it or not, even if you don't feel confident inside. So it's all about kind of how you project yourself. Just by speaking loudly and with the right posture, you're going to appear to be more confident. Of course, you want to make sure you don't mumble. Something that is common is that people tend to let their voices get smaller and trail off if you're maybe a little shy or less confident. So even if you don't feel it, just by speaking loudly, you're going to come across more confidently. You don't want to let your voice trail off. And obviously, you don't want to make any distracting noises or motions. So you also want to make sure you try to connect with your audience. I know for some people, this is difficult if you're shy, but as much as possible, make eye contact. And if it's difficult for you to make eye contact, a trick is to look right above people, and it's going to look like you're looking right at them. So if you don't look directly at their eyes and make eye contact, just look right above. Smile. So again, this is going to help you. There's going to be a physiological reaction to when you smile, and that will help you calm down. And of course, it'll make the audience at ease as well. You want to be sure and answer any questions and be courteous. and try to talk to the audience and not the screen. So that's where practice is going to come in and help, so that you basically, kind of have to know what you're going to say ahead of time. You want to refer to what's on the visuals, of course, because those are there to help you with your presentation. So it's great to point and whatnot, but rather than staring at the screen, you want to look at the audience and be yourself and convey your excitement for your work. Okay, so just a quick summary checklist of these tips for when you're presenting. You want to kind of set your stage and prepare yourself. You prepare yourself through practice. In the case of orals, something that might help you, I know it helps me a lot, is I actually like to go ahead of time. You should already have your assignments about when and where you're going to be speaking. You can go into the room ahead of time and take a look. I always like to go and look at the space, kind of stand up by the podium, look around and feel comfortable, so that I know, it just helps to make you feel more comfortable. Maybe you're confident, you don't care, but if you're a little bit more nervous about things, going ahead of time to look at the space and even standing up there would be helpful. So that's kind of the first one. The second was kind of getting ready, getting yourself ready, knowing your lines, knowing your subject. Those are all the things you can do to prepare in advance. If you do have a fear of public speaking, you can overcome them the variety of ways in advance, as well as just like right before your presentation. If you breathe slowly, just take some nice, slow, deep breaths prior to your talk. Again, it's going to stimulate a sympathetic reaction in your nervous system, which will actually calm you down. You can use visualizations if that is helpful, to help you just visualize yourself giving a fantastic talk and getting the audience excited. You can do affirmations for yourself as well, whatever techniques you have to help you feel confident and less nervous about your talk. When it's your time to go to give your talk, just stride up to the platform, raise your head up and your shoulders and your neck so you stand tall, and keep your chest lifted, because that will, again, help you look and feel more confident and help you enunciate better. Smile to reduce your stress. Make sure you speak up and that you don't let your voice trail off, especially at the end. Take your time, but be cognizant of the time. If you've practiced ahead of time, you make sure you stay on time. Talk to your audience, and then don't drift off at the end. Think of some nice, catchy little thing to say at the end to let everyone know that you're concluded, but you end with crescendo, not just trailing off. Okay, I also encourage you to be yourself. After all, it's kind of funny, when I first started giving presentations, I tried so hard to be professional that I apparently was very stiff, and I got some feedback that I needed to relax and be myself. And once I did that, I had a lot more fun and I gave a much better presentation. So I want to encourage you to be yourself, and but just make sure that you're a professional self. Now, when it comes to taking questions, so now moving on to the last topic, which is discussion. When it comes to taking on questions, the first thing that I recommend, which is the last thing that most people think about, is instead of just jumping right in and talking, you listen. So listen first to make sure you understood what the person was asking. Again, if you're up there and you're a little bit nervous, sometimes your mind doesn't always pay attention. And a good technique, which you can do, you don't always have to do this, but is to repeat the question so you're sure you understand what someone asked you. And then, as best as possible, reply with confidence. Take your time to explain. Remember that the people, everyone else that's out there, they do not know as much as you do about the problem. There might be some very basic fundamental concepts or topics or terms that they don't know or understand that you need to explain to them to answer their questions. And if you do not know the answer to a question, it is absolutely fine, 100% for you to say, hey, that's a great question. I do not know the answer to that, but I will be more than happy to research it and get back to you, because the last thing you want to do is just make up some kind of answer and whatnot. You will come across as more confident and knowledgeable if you admit you don't know the answer to a question and, acknowledge, someone could be asking you a great question, or sometimes it's just a matter of you not understanding exactly what they were asking. So create a dialogue and make sure you understand what someone's asking. If you don't know the answer, it's okay. And maybe someone just asked a really great question and something that you might want to go back and do more research on and learn about. So here's a couple examples that I have that I'm going to share with you. And again, like I said, I encourage using multiple methods, imagery. You can use videos if you're giving an oral presentation, analogies. There's so much available on the internet at your fingertips. Obviously, you just want to make sure that you give proper acknowledgement. So here's an example. I was giving a leadership talk to some scientists, and I used analogy, and I talked about natural self-assembly and these beautiful images here that I found freely available on the internet of crystals and leaves, because these molecules naturally self-assemble. And I use this talk about leadership and how natural self-assembly occurs in leadership. I also talked about in terms of carbon nanotubes, which is a way that humans, scientists, have done really cool things with this concept of natural self-assembly. So in nature, snowflakes and leaves form naturally. Well, we've created these things, of course, now many years ago called carbon nanotubes, which takes this natural process of carbon atoms forming sheets and, tweaks them and creates these tubes out of them. So I also gave an example from an engineering perspective, which these are robots which come together and assemble to create greater things together. So a few final tips here for all of you who are attending ERN. The oral sessions are going to be on Friday and Saturday at the time shown here. So you should have received already your assignment, which says which session you're going to be giving your oral presentation on which day. So if you're in session 2 on Friday, it's going to be between 4 and 6:30 p.m. and you should have a room assignment as well. And as a reminder, all the awards, so all of the orals and the posters are going to be judged. And then the judges will have the hard job of trying to pick the winners. And those winners will be announced in the closing banquet, which is an awesome evening plenary session on Saturday. Other important dates to keep in mind is there is a student orientation and networking event on site on Thursday, March 14th. And so just to close out in summary, when you give an oral presentation, it's going to advance your professional skills and standing in the community and give you lots of benefits. Be sure to review the judging criteria if you're going to ERN or whatever conference you're going to be presenting at. When you prepare your slides, make them professional, don't overcrowd them, use a mix of media, make sure that you use proper grammar, punctuation, and terms. Prepare yourself. Present with confidence and clearly and understandably projecting your voice. For your discussion, listen, confirm, and answer. And remember, it's okay if you don't know the answer to a question that was asked. And make sure overall that you tell a really fun, understandable story that people can follow using these techniques I described today. So with that, I'm happy to stop and take any questions, and then we'll turn it over to Iris for our wrap up. Do we have any questions in the chat or anyone want to ask them?
Yep. So are we expected to title our slides with overview, methods, future work? I'll let you answer that, but yeah, you always need to have headings, just like a poster session. What is our time limit for this presentation? So we sent all of that information yesterday. So you need to check your email. We also launched a notice via the Hoover app, and it has all the same information, the same presentation guidelines apply when you submitted your abstract. They are the same presentation guidelines, so they have not changed. So it's the same guidelines that's on the website, the same guidelines when you submitted your abstract, and they are in your information packet in the notices that we sent yesterday. So all of that information is explained in the notice that we sent yesterday. So check your email, visit the Hoover app to see your assigned presentation slots, and all of that info, you just need to check your email.
See, someone wants to go to the fourth to the last slide, which I think is this one. Is that the one that you want to see? And just to back up with what Iris was saying about your slides, you should absolutely have a title on every slide. And it's okay to use the exact terms I said, like overview or methods, or, you know, come up with your own titles, but absolutely you want to have a title for that. Okay, there we go. So this is the one.
And again, all the information we sent to you, it was posted on our website in August. It's on our agenda at a glance that's posted on our website. It was also shared with you when you applied for an abstract, or if you were selected for a travel award. So we've shared this information in several formats that include our website and notices to you. So you just definitely need to check your email. Another question, when using cartoons or illustrations developed with AI, how should it be credited?
So if you, wherever you got your cartoon or illustration, you just want to put a little caption underneath it saying where you got it. And you just, you know, want to be careful that if you're getting something from a website and it's copyrighted or something like that, obviously you can't do that. But if you, you know, used Chat GPT, then credit Chat GPT. Say this was found using Chat GPT. So you just can have a little note, you know, there saying where you got it.
Great. Any other questions? And again, we sent out all of the information yesterday. So you need to check your email, your spam, and your junk folder. The questions you all are asking, all of that information we covered in our notices. So you need to check your email. Paolo, we did not schedule your flight. You, we send that information to, if you are a travel awardee, we set up a travel booking process, and you all had to call and book your own flight. You were supposed to book to arrive on Thursday and leave on Sunday per our instructions that we sent to all travel awardees. So if you did not book the correct flights, then I'm not sure what to do about that, but we gave specific instructions for travel booking back in November and October for all travel awardees to arrive by a certain time Thursday, and plan to leave on Sunday. So not sure what you did there, but that is something that all travel awardees had to take care of themselves. We did not book any flights for anyone. Yeah, we haven't changed any flights. You as the student were responsible to call the number that we provided and use the instructions that we shared to book your own flight. We didn't book any flights for anyone. That is not how the process works. So you booked your own flight. You schedule your arrival and your return date. Yes, we recorded yesterday's, I did a virtual student, great question, David. I did a virtual student orientation simply for those students that would be arriving after 4 p.m. and wouldn't be able to make the beginning of our in-person student orientation on Thursday at 4 p.m. We will be sending that recording and the slides out later this week. So as long as you registered, all registrants will receive the recording and the slides. And we also will most likely share it on our website as well as our social media outlet. Everyone received a notice yesterday about their presentation slides. You need to check your email. Those were sent out at 4 p.m. yesterday. So we sent all of those details out yesterday at 4 p.m. You need to check your email, you need to check your spam, and you need to check your junk folders. We launched it via the Hoover app. So whatever email you use to register as a general registrant or a travel awardee, that is the email it went to. So you need to check your email, review the information carefully. All of the questions that you are asking were answered in that notice. So definitely make sure, I don't know if this is the correct, if the survey was slotted in, Marianne, so check your email, yeah, because if you're using the slides from last time, it wasn't slotted in.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
That's okay, that's okay. So look out for an email to complete a survey on this webinar to let us know if this type of thing is helpful. You know, surveys are very important because it informs us on if the things that we are doing that we think are helping you are really helping you. So definitely look out for an email shortly with the survey to complete the survey on this webinar. And definitely feel free to follow us on our social media outlets. If you were selected as a travel awardee, congratulations. If you were selected to present your research, congratulations. Or if you are simply attending, congratulations. And feel free to share about your presentation or travel award or attendance using our hashtag ERN 2024. Thank you all. Thank you so much, Dr. Leung, for an awesome presentation. Thanks, and looking forward to seeing you all at ERN. Check your emails to answer all the questions that you are asking. We've shared all of that information in multiple formats. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody. Feel free to reach out to me if you have follow-up questions.
Bye.
Bye.